I never thought I'd come back from a short trip to find over 1,000 trees missing from my own property. But that's exactly what happened. Imagine walking through your peaceful lake ranch land that's been in your family for generations. Moly. To find it stripped bare, tree stumps scattered like scars across the ground. At first, I couldn't even process it. Who would do something like this? And why? It didn't take long before the truth pointed straight to our local HOA. See this? Wasn't just any neighborhood association. These folks had been butting heads with me for years, nagging about fences, boat docks, even the color of my shed. But this time, they crossed a line I never imagined possible. Without a word, without a single notice or legal step, they brought in crews, bulldozers, and chainsaws and cut down 1,001 trees. Pines, oaks, some nearly a century old. All gone. But here's where it gets wild. Because just as I was trying to figure out what steps to take next, something unexpected happened. The HOA board suddenly went silent. No calls, no emails, just ... frozen. And that's when I found the real twist in the story. You see, part of my lake ranch falls on protected federal land. They didn't even bother to check before acting. Which means what they did wasn't just wrong, it might have been a serious federal crime. Now, the question is, will they be held accountable? Or will they try to cover it up and walk away? In this video, I'll break down exactly what happened, how I discovered the truth, and the moment the HOA realized just how deep they'd gotten themselves into. Stick around, because things are just getting started, and the fallout might be bigger than anyone expected. Let me back up a little so you can understand how this all started. I bought the lake ranch nearly 12 years ago. It's a quiet piece of land tucked between two hills with a stretch of shoreline that wraps around the back. I planted most of those trees myself, while some had been standing long before I even got there. I never intended to mess with anyone, and I just wanted peace, space, and a connection to the land. But that didn't sit well with the HOA. From day one, they made it clear I was an outsider. The neighborhood had changed hands a few years before. I moved in, and the new HOA board came in with a controlling attitude. They didn't like that my property didn't follow their cookie-cutter layout. They complained about the wild look of my woods, claimed it hurt their home values, and accused me of ignoring community aesthetics. I never joined the HO. They had no jurisdiction over my ranch, or so I thought. The first signs were subtle, notes left on my gate. Then meetings I wasn't invited to. Then came the legal threats about unauthorized structures near the waterline. I pushed back every time, with paperwork proving my land wasn't part of their coverage. But the tension just kept building. So when I left town for a short work trip, I wasn't expecting to come back to destruction. They didn't ask. They didn't warn. They acted like they had the right. I stood there, looking over the wreckage, hundreds of tree stumps, bulldozer tracks, torn soil land. I just couldn't believe it. Still, what stunned me more was their sudden silence. These same people who once flooded my inbox now wouldn't say a word. It was almost like they knew something they weren't ready to admit, and that's when I started digging. What I found next, that changed everything. I started with the obvious, getting copies of property records, satellite images, and digging through every legal document I had. My gut told me the HOA had messed up. But I didn't realize just how badly until I got a call from an old friend who works in land management. I sent him some GPS coordinates, and a few days later he called me back and said, "You're not going to believe this, but part of your ranch lies on federally protected watershed." That moment hit like a punch in the chest. That stretch of land by the lake, the same area where most of the trees had been cut, wasn't just mine. It was technically co-managed with federal oversight because of the water source. It's meant to remain untouched to prevent erosion, preserve wildlife habitats, and protect downstream water quality. Any disturbance, especially mass clearing, requires special permits, inspections, and approvals, none of which the HOA ever bothered to get at that point. I knew this wasn't just some overreach, could have serious legal consequences, but still, no word from the HOA. So I started talking to neighbors, quietly at first. One of them, Susan, said she overheard a board meeting where someone mentioned taking matters into their own hands. Another neighbor, Carl, showed me pictures he took of the tree clearing crews. Big trucks, no company logos, no safety markers. It all smelled shady. Meanwhile, the land itself was reacting. Without the trees, the slope above the lake was beginning to shift, mud was starting to pool after rainstorms, and runoff was clouding the water. I reached out to a local environmental officer just to get an opinion. What he said: this could turn into a full investigation. Still, the HOA wouldn't respond. And I couldn't shake the feeling they were scrambling behind closed doors, trying to hide something deeper. The more I dug, the stranger things got. I went to the county office to request any permits filed for tree removal on my parcel. The clerk scanned the system twice and looked confused. "There's nothing here," she said. "Not even a notification." That's when I knew they didn't just act without authority. They did it in complete silence, off the books. That kind of move doesn't just happen without someone deliberately covering their tracks. Then came the anonymous envelope. No return address, just stuffed in my mailbox one morning. Inside were printed photos, timestamps showing a few HOA board members standing near the tree-cutting crews. One image showed them talking to a man in a yellow vest, pointing at a map. Another showed them walking off with what looked like paperwork. Whoever sent it clearly wanted me to know who was behind this. I took the photos to a local attorney, and he didn't mince words. "This isn't a civil matter anymore," he said. "This could involve federal land violations, destruction of protected property, and conspiracy if more than one person was involved knowingly." That made my heart race. I wasn't just dealing with a neighbor dispute anymore. This was heading towards something much bigger. Soon after, I noticed something even more disturbing. One of the board members' homes went up for sale fast. Another had resigned without warning, according to a neighbor. Then the HOA's official website went offline completely. No meeting notices, no contact emails. It was like they were vanishing in plain sight. But the damage to the land was still there, plain as day. Rain kept falling, turning cleared areas into a mess of runoff and debris. I called the environmental officer again, and this time he said the agency was preparing for a site review. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just going to stay local. Something much bigger was coming. Just when I thought things couldn't get more tangled, the second twist hit sand. It came from someone I never expected. A retired park ranger named Bill, who used to monitor the federal lands in our region, showed up at my gate one afternoon. He said he'd heard rumors about tree clearing near the lake and wanted to see it for himself. As we walked through the damaged area, he stopped suddenly, stared at the ground, and said, "This wasn't just tree removal. They dug here." At first, I didn't understand what he meant. But then he pointed to a shallow patch near the waterline, dirt, freshly turned darker than the surrounding soil. Bill crouched down, ran his hand over the surface, and said, "Something was buried here and recently taken out." That's when it hit me. Could this whole tree-cutting operation have been a cover for something else? I didn't want to believe it. I figured the HOA had just overstepped, tried to force conformity, maybe cover up their mistake. But now, it looked like they might have had another reason for choosing that specific area of my land. Maybe they were after something, buried something they didn't want anyone else to find. The question was, what? Later that night, I went back to that spot with a flashlight and shovel. I started digging around the edge, careful not to disturb anything deep. That's when I struck wood. Not a tree stump, but something flat, smooth, and clearly shaped. I stopped immediately. Whatever this was, it had been placed here on purpose. At the same time, word spread that federal investigators had scheduled an official site visit. Whatever the HOA had done was about to come under a much bigger spotlight. And now, with this possible discovery buried in the middle of it all, I couldn't help but wonder, what exactly were they trying to hide? When the federal investigators finally arrived, they didn't waste time. 2 black SUVs rolled up my dirt road, and within minutes, men in plain jackets started surveying the damaged area. I showed them everything: photos, documents, the anonymous envelope, and of course, the strange spot near the lake where I'd uncovered that buried wood. They marked it off immediately and brought in a team to carefully dig it out. What they found shocked everyone. It was an old military footlocker, sealed tight. Inside were weathered documents, rusted metal containers, and a few tools wrapped in oilcloth. One of the agents took one look and said, "These look like Cold War-era materials. This could be linked to an old training site that was abandoned decades ago." Turns out, the land near my ranch had once been part of a classified federal program during the 1960s, and some leftover equipment had been buried and forgotten. And somehow, someone in the HOA must have known, or at least suspected. That explained why they cleared only that section of the land. The tree removal wasn't just about HOA control or enforcing community rules. It was about gaining access without drawing attention. But their mistake was massive. Not only did they trespass on federal land and cause environmental damage, but they also triggered a federal investigation into the unauthorized excavation of government property. 3 HOA board members were questioned by agents. One confessed to having heard rumors from a relative who used to work in regional surveying. The board had quietly voted to dig without reporting it, hoping to find something valuable. They thought removing the trees would buy them cover. But here's the twist no one saw coming after the investigation. The government decided to reclaim that section of land permanently due to its historical value. And while I kept my ranch, I lost access to that beautiful shoreline for good. The HOA scheme didn't just destroy trees, it cost me a piece of my home. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. The federal agency fenced off the lakeside section, placed warning signs, and set up regular patrols to protect the newly uncovered site. It was strange, watching a part of my own land become off-limits, knowing I had taken care of it for over a decade. But I understood. Some history is bigger than personal ownership, even if it stings. As for the HOA, their reputation was in pieces. 2 board members resigned permanently, while the third was formally cited for trespassing and unauthorized excavation on federal property. The HOA tried to backpedal, claiming it was a misunderstanding, but the community didn't buy it. Many neighbors began speaking out, frustrated with how the board had overstepped and risked the entire neighbor's peace. One good thing did come from it: all the attention brought in local conservation groups who offered to help replant parts of the damaged land. Volunteers, even people who'd once sided with the HOA, showed up to plant saplings. Slowly, the land is healing. It'll take years to regrow what was lost, but it's a start. And for me, I've learned to be more cautious about who I trust, how I protect what's mine, and how quickly things can spiral when power's misused. My lake ranch may never be the same, but it's still home. I walk it every morning, breathe in the fresh air, and remember the trees that once stood tall. The story may be over, but the land's memory remains. So if you ever think something like this can't happen, think again. Sometimes the biggest battles don't come with warning signs. They come with silence, sawdust, and the sound of trees falling when no one's supposed to be watching. Thanks for being here, and stay sharp out there.